just so overwhelmed. And as a teenager, we had, in my family, a horse named Hope. And at one point, this horse died suddenly. And my little sister was wandering around all day saying, "Hope is dead, Hope is dead." and at that point in our relationship, fast forward to our marriage here, once it settled in, the truth of what was going on, I felt that Hope was dead. And it was just the sheer shock of it. And that is our message, that although the weight of an addiction like this and the scope of it can make it feel as though all hope is dead, it's not. And that given time, you can find peace and healing. But definitely I felt violated and so betrayed, and that was crushing. But again, to realize that the process of dealing with this addiction and the recovery process, really the wife is going through a grieving and mourning process, and there are steps and phases to go through that can ultimately, as she recognizes them and honors her need to mourn, eventually come to a place of healing again.
We're talking with William and Mae Donne. They are the authors of the book, We Will End the Conflict Now, Victory Over Pornography from the Perspective of a Recovered Addict and His Wife. William, just so we don't let this little fact slip away, just tell people where either on the internet they can find you, or tell us where people can get a copy of this book.
Sure, absolutely. It just came out last week, so the storefronts that it'll be in, will increase. But, right off the bat, they can find it on barnesandnoble.com. Also, we have a site called ourvictories.com, and it's available on that site as well.
William, describe a little bit of the process. Once the truth comes out, and, as Mae said, there's a sense, okay, we've got the problem now. What do we do? And then suddenly you find it's much bigger. What are the typical steps that somebody's got to go through to do the hard work of being set free from addiction to pornography?
Yeah, that's a great question. To preface my answer, maybe I'll say this. I've been privileged to work with several individuals and couples and help them through this process. And it is common to refer to a 12-step program similar to Alcoholics Anonymous. But our message in the book is, it's more than just do this, do that, and you're free and clear. It's a series of principles that you need to understand. And whether we call it steps or principles, number one is communication. And I think, what allows pornography addiction and any kind of addiction to continue is secrecy. We're ashamed, we're embarrassed, we're angry. There's a whole slew of emotions and fears that keep us from disclosing our problems to the people that we love, and that's the very thing that allows it to continue. And so, again, number one for me was communicating. Once I finally got to a point where I had no fear. Well, no, I take that back. I was afraid that the consequences would, take my family away from me. But I got to a point where none of that mattered. And that moment when I told my wife, was just a turnkey moment in my life. And I remember, that moment when she asked me very specifically if it was in my life, and I was able to answer yes. And then she asked, well, how long have you looked at it? And I told her, and she asked, well, when did you last look at it? And I told her. That was a huge relief. And I remember feeling immediately the lifting of a burden off my shoulders. Conversely, though, it didn't take long to look over at my wife and see that the burden was not lighter because it was gone. I simply shifted the weight. And so now my wife and I were holding this boulder, if you will, together. And the process from there, again, became a series of communications, turning that burden over to the Lord, bringing our families into it. A lot of people think you have to just disclose the problem to your spouse, but I'd argue that the more people you can involve, the better. I talk about 4 corners in the book: your family, your coworkers, ecclesiastical leaders, all sorts of places that you frequent. If you can communicate your struggles to them, then in every corner you go in life, you'll have somebody to strengthen you in the process.
May, you want to add anything to what your husband is saying?
Yeah, definitely. I just really feel like for both of us, in my husband's recovery and in my path to healing, the total and complete key to the beginning of both of those was honesty, complete honesty. It wasn't until my husband was completely and totally honest about everything that he was really able to begin to feel free from it. And it wasn't until I was completely and totally honest with all of my feelings and how his addiction was affecting me that I was able to move forward slowly and begin to process my healing.
And maybe I can add something to that, that when I say communication, and my wife hit the nail right on the head there, it's not just communicating, but it's communicating correctly and honestly. And even after that first moment when I told my wife, I did not tell her everything. And there were several times when I met with different ecclesiastical leaders to confess. And for whatever reason, there were certain mistakes that I had made that I was really embarrassed to admit, and so I withheld them. And in doing that, it left that, seed inside to ferment later on. The key to really overcoming this is to get everything out on the table, no matter how far back you have to go. Even pre-marriage, we can't justify that, that because it happened before we knew them, we don't have to disclose it. We do. And it's in doing that that allows us to make that U-turn and begin a new life.
It occurs to me that there are probably, with absolute certainty, there are people listening to the program right now, and they are trapped. They are in the middle of this, and no one in the world knows, but they are in the pit of hopeless despair, gripped by this pornography addiction. They hear you talking. What would you say to them right now? What step could they take that would begin to lead them toward the light of God and release and freedom?
I think that step is probably already taking place as they're listening here. There needs to be, this subtle change of heart that turns us to God, and you can never get, for all the steps that we talk about and all the principles, you just can never underestimate the power of prayer. We talk about healing, and there's this common mistake, especially when we think of physical healing, that wounds heal by time, and our message is they don't. They heal in time, but the Lord has the power to heal. He healed the sick. He restored sight to the blind. He resurrected the dead. So there's no saying that he can do that now, that he can heal the sick and sorrowful heart, that he can restore our sight and help us clearly see the path that we individually and as a couple need to follow, and that he can resurrect what we think is a dead marriage. So, my message is just hang on. We feel very keenly the pain that these couples are going through. And number one is, make it a matter of prayer. Talk to your spouse. Find somebody to talk to start the process of communicating.
Surely those are just so important. And also, when the opportunity came for me to participate in the writing of this book, honestly, you couldn't pay me enough to go back and relive and sort through so many of those miserably hard times. But I have such a desire for other women not to feel alone like I did in my feelings. I so wanted to share my story and the insights that I have found in my life and through inspiration and God, that I wanted to be able to share those so that other women could feel encouraged and hopeful and find their own direction as they travel their path to healing also.
Well, we thank you so very much for your honesty, your transparency. William and Mae Donne, authors of the book, We Will End the Conflict. It is from the perspective of a recovered addict and his wife. Victory over pornography. We just encourage you, get this book. It is going to really impact your life. And you can get it several different ways, but the one website I want to direct you to is ourvictories.com. Ourvictories.com. Go to that website. And that's all about their ministry, and you'll see the book there on the website as well, and you can find out more. I'm sure you people can connect with you there as well. And we just thank you so much for your perspective, your honesty, and your transparency, and thanks for being with us today on Today's Issues.
Thanks, John and Ray. We appreciate it. God bless.
All right. Wow.
Wow.
Powerful
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah, and I have a sense that God's going to